Iceland, where fire and ice coexist. The land is shaped by constant movement. Here, nature sets the rules. The terrain feels unfamiliar, almost unfinished. Reykjanes Peninsula. In the Reykjanes Peninsula, the surface breaks apart without warning. Lava fields stretch in every direction. The land shows no clear boundary between old and new rock. Fagradalsfjall. The ground opens gradually. Lava emerges without explosion. Heat spreads across the surface. Color fades as crust forms. Activity reshapes the field. Litli Hrútur. Fire escapes through narrow fractures in the earth. It does not explode, it flows. The line stays open longer than expected. The ground rearranges in silence. Eldhraun. Here, lava has already cooled. Moss spreads across the surface. Time softens what was once violent. Verur, Krafla area. Heat reaches the surface again. Steam rises from mineral-stained ground. The land appears alive. The air feels heavier here. Krafla. A volcanic scar now holds water. The surface is calm. Pressure remains below. The rim stays sharp against the sky. Nothing here feels fully settled. Verfjall. Verfjall stands almost perfectly round. The ground here supports little life. Only shape remains. Carrid crater. Carrid collapsed inward instead of erupting outward. Water filled the hollow. The land keeps its memory. Color stays as a warning. Vatnajökull. Ice spreads across valleys and mountains. Pressure shapes deep fractures. Movement continues beneath the surface. Fjalsjökull. Ice extends forward in silence. Edges crack and separate. Gravity decides the direction. Time works without pause. Fjallarlón. Ice breaks away gently. Blocks drift without collision. Color deepens with compression. The surface remains quiet. Jökulsárlón. Ice moves toward the sea. Forms rotate slowly. Nothing stays in place. Diamond Beach. Ice reaches land briefly. Black sand absorbs the light. Fragments scatter and return. Contrast defines the moment. Sólheimajökull. Ash lines cut through the ice. Crevasses open unpredictably. Surface conditions shift constantly. The glacier carries memory. Change is visible here. Mýrdalsjökull. Mýrdalsjökull covers an active volcanic system beneath its ice. The glacier's weight suppresses heat rising from below. Surface changes appear slow. Pressure continues to build. Ice and fire remain locked together here. Fagradalsfjall Canyon. Water follows a narrow path through volcanic rock. The river bends slowly. Time, not force, shapes the canyon walls. Stuðlagjá Canyon. Stuðlagjá Canyon was hidden for centuries beneath a powerful river. When water levels dropped, basalt columns slowly emerged along the gorge. The rock formed as lava cooled and contracted into geometric shapes. In summer, glacial meltwater turns the river a vivid turquoise. Erosion revealed a structure that had been waiting in silence. Aspergi. The canyon opens into a wide curve. Its shape suggests sudden movement. The scale feels deliberate. Molaglufur. Steep walls limit the view. Waterfalls descend from unseen heights. The space remains enclosed. Sigolduglufur. Sigolduglufur opens as a narrow canyon shaped by persistent water flow. Multiple waterfalls descend along its steep walls. The river carved the rock gradually, following lines of weakness. Basalt layers guide the direction of erosion. Movement remains constant, even when the landscape appears still. Gerduberg. Columns align along a straight edge. The rock cooled slowly. Shape remains after movement ends. Reykjanes Peninsula. Black sand stretches along the shoreline, formed from eroded volcanic rock. Waves from the North Atlantic arrive with unusual force and speed. Basalt columns rise behind the beach, shaped as lava cooled and fractured. Offshore, sea stacks stand where softer stone was worn away. The coastline remains active, shaped continuously by water and wind. Deer Holaye Lighthouse. The lighthouse stands above a high promontory on Iceland's southern coast. Basalt cliffs drop sharply into the North Atlantic below. The headland was built from repeated lava flows, later shaped by erosion. An arched opening formed where waves cut through weaker rock. From this height, the coastline's constant movement becomes visible. Reykjanes Drangar. Rock rises from the water. The ocean surrounds its base. The pillars remain exposed. Krisuvikurberg Cliffs. The coastline becomes vertical. Waves strike the rock repeatedly. Erosion continues without pause. Bjarg. The cliffs stretch beyond sight. Birds occupy narrow ledges. The scale overwhelms distance. Raudisandur. Sand spreads across the bay in shifting shades of red, gold, and pale pink. The color comes from crushed shells mixed into the shoreline. Unlike most beaches here, the land slopes gently toward the sea. Tides reshape the surface with each cycle. The coast feels wide, quiet, and unusually soft for Iceland. Vestmannaeyjar. An archipelago shaped by repeated volcanic eruptions in the North Atlantic. The youngest islands rose from the sea within living memory. Cliffs of dark basalt ring much of the coastline. Here, land has expanded not by erosion, but by fire. Human settlement remains secondary to the forces that formed it. Heimaey. The main island of the Vestmannaeyjar archipelago. Most of the population lives along its sheltered harbor. Volcanic eruptions have reshaped the coastline more than once. In 1973, lava flows expanded the island's size. Life here continues alongside a landscape that can still change. Elephant Rock. The cliff resembles a familiar shape. Waves carved its outline. Erosion suggests movement. Surtsey. An island that did not exist before the 1960s. Surtsey rose from the ocean during a prolonged volcanic eruption. Ash and lava accumulated above sea level, forming new land. Since then, nature has been left to work without human interference. It remains a living record of how land begins. Grimsey. Light behaves differently here. Summer extends the day. Winter compresses it. Landmannalaugar. A valley where volcanic heat reaches the surface. Mountains display bands of green, yellow, and rust-red rhyolite. Minerals in the rock were altered by repeated geothermal activity. Hot springs gather at the base of the slopes. Here, color becomes a direct result of heat and time. Eyjafjall. A solitary cone rising from a field of black volcanic sand. Layers of hardened lava form its near-perfect shape. Seasonal moss covers the slopes, turning the surface green in summer. Glacial rivers branch around its base, shifting with meltwater. Isolation defines the landscape, more than scale. Fagradalsfjall. Fagradalsfjall rises from the highlands with slopes stained by geothermal minerals. Steam vents cut through rhyolite ridges, releasing heat near the surface. Water alters the rock, shifting colors from pale green to deep red. Snow and steam often share the same frame here. The landscape shows how heat continues to work, long after eruptions end. Laugarhraun. A lava field formed by a historic eruption near Landmannalaugar. The surface cooled into twisted black rock, uneven and sharp. Over time, moss settled into cracks and hollows. The green layer softened the field, without hiding its origin. Heat shaped the ground first. Then time changed its texture. Blahilur. A small crater lake set within volcanic highlands. Its deep blue color comes from clear groundwater filling the hollow. The crater formed after an explosive eruption emptied its core. Steep walls protect the water from strong surface winds. Here, stillness contrasts with the land that created it. Frost Astadavatn. The lake interrupts the lava. Water settles between solid flows. Stillness dominates the scene. Ljótupollur. A crater lake formed by a violent eruption centuries ago. Red volcanic walls surround water of deep blue. Minerals in the rock stain the slopes with warm color. Moss and lichen slowly reclaim the surface. Despite its name, the landscape feels carefully balanced. Skogafoss. Water drops in a wide curtain from a cliff that once marked the coastline. The river is fed by meltwater from glaciers far inland. Mist rises constantly at the base, catching light as it moves. Erosion has kept the edge sharp, despite centuries of flow. The waterfall holds its scale, unchanged by time. Seljalandsfoss. Water falls from a cliff that once stood at the edge of the sea. As the land gradually rose, the waterfall remained fixed to the same line. Erosion carved a hollow space behind the falling stream. The sound changes as water passes through open air and stone. Here, the earlier shape of the coastline becomes easy to imagine. Dettifoss. A massive volume of water drops into a narrow channel. The force comes from glacial melt flowing across the highlands. Energy concentrates at the edge, before releasing downward. The ground nearby vibrates under continuous impact. Here, power is measured by movement, rather than height. Godafoss. Water spreads across a wide, curved drop before falling into the river below. The flow divides around a central rock, shaping a broad horseshoe form. Basalt edges guide the direction of the current. Mist rises gently, softening the surrounding landscape. Gullfoss. Water disappears into a narrow canyon. Mist rises from below. Depth obscures the landing. Dinjandi. Water descends in wide tiers, spreading as it moves downward. The shape resembles a veil, widening toward the base. Each level slows the flow, before releasing it again. Erosion shaped the cliff gradually, step by step. From a distance, movement appears calm, despite the scale. Reykjavik. Buildings spread along the coastline. Heat rises from beneath the ground. Daily life continues above volcanic systems. The city adapts quietly. Akureyri. The town sits at the end of a long fjord. Mountains frame the settlement. Scale feels contained. Húsavík. The harbor opens toward cold waters. Movement comes from the sea. Life follows seasonal rhythms. Silence returns between arrivals. Vik. Houses face the open ocean. Black sand stretches outward. Distance dominates the view. Seyðisfjörður. The road descends into a narrow fjord. Color appears among steep slopes. Fog softens the outlines. The town remains enclosed. Grundarfjörður. The village rests beneath a single mountain. The landscape dominates attention. Human presence feels temporary. The mountain remains unchanged. Hornstrandir. No permanent roads reach this area. Movement depends on weather and sea. Human presence is temporary. Wildlife occupies the space. Silence dominates. Thorsmork. a protected valley framed by glaciers and steep mountains. Meltwater rivers weave through layered terrain. Volcanic ash enriched the soil, allowing dense vegetation to grow. Shelter from surrounding peaks creates a calmer interior climate. Here, movement gathers quietly, between ice and rock. Thingvellir National Park. The land slowly separates. Movement happens without sound. History formed here. Decisions once gathered. The ground continues to shift. Laki. The ground once opened. The impact traveled outward. Time absorbed the damage. Memory remained. Solheimasandur. An object rests on empty land. Purpose disappeared. The structure remains. Silence surrounds it. Fagradalsfjall. A powerful fall cuts through dark volcanic rock. Glacial water drops into a deep canyon carved by repeated floods. Mist rises where force meets stone. The river continues below. Reshaping the land downstream. Brúarfoss. A narrow river accelerates through fractured lava. Water turns a vivid blue. As glacial melt mixes with minerals, the channel bends sharply, tightening the flow. Movement concentrates into a single, bright line. Aldjarfoss. Basalt frames the descent. Columns form a boundary. Water stays white and cold. Geometry contains chaos. Flow remains uninterrupted. Langjökull. Ice spreads across the highlands in a broad, silent mass. Pressure shapes hidden valleys beneath the surface. Meltwater begins its journey, long before it is seen. Svartifoss. Basalt frames the fall. Ice once shaped the cliff. Water traces the pattern. Structure remains. Múlaglufur Canyon. Glacial rivers carved depth. Walls rise sharply. Access remains limited. Distance reduces sound. Isolation persists. Vitsarkur. A solitary figure stands. Shape invites interpretation. Tide reveals its base. Stone resists retreat. Stokksnes. Mountains approach the sea. Sand shifts with wind. Grass holds briefly. Reflections distort scale. The shoreline moves. Vestrahorn. Peaks rise abruptly. Dark stone absorbs weather. Clouds alter form. Presence dominates. Thrinukagigur. The chamber stands empty. Lava once drained away. Space replaces pressure. Walls expose layers. Silence dominates. The land continues to change. Ice moves. Water flows. Nothing here remains fixed.